Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. I'm Andia, a licensed addiction counselor, and along with my co-host, Laura Kissman, a quantum nutritionist, we will be inviting expert scientists, clinicians, survivors, and thrivers to distill their pearls of wisdom attained from applying quantum biology to their fields of research and everyday lives. Our goal is to bring you easy to understand principles and practices about the study of light, water, and magnetism so you can take your health into your own hands. This episode is sponsored by Viva Rays, the only eyewear company that truly understands your biology. Viva Rays are advanced blue light glasses designed with circadian biology in mind. Unlike typical blue blockers, they filter light in harmony with your body's natural rhythms, helping you sleep deeper, feel more energized, and protect your long-term health. We love companies that support biology-backed wellness, and Viva Rays is leading the way. Use code QuantumHealthy at vivarays.com to save 15% and support your sleep, focus, and natural energy the way nature intended. Enjoy this episode.
Right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Nico Martens. And today we're going to be talking with him about the Cosmic Tower. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I actually have my Cosmic Tower. Her name is Ula, and she's sitting behind me, so we'll reference that today. But Nico is an electromechanical engineer by training and has had a very successful career at Procter Gamble and Hewlett Packard. But I'm going to actually have Nico share where he's at now, just share his enlightened journey with us. So, Nico, I'm just going to turn it over to you. We're so excited to have you and talk to you today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. And yes, what we are going to talk about today includes the subtle realms. It includes the more spiritual world. And just to tell you, I did not believe in any of this for 36 years. I was a scientist by training, and my whole life I was educated in the realm of science. I didn't believe in anything spiritual or higher realms. And it sounds so silly when I talk about it, this way now that I could actually believe that. But then what happened in 2012 is my mother, she passed away in Belgium. And it was actually through euthanasia because she had terminal cancer. And yeah, so she did euthanasia, and I remember there on that Friday, like moments before she was to pass, because it's kind of an interesting, yeah, it's always strange when people pass, and definitely if you're gonna know when it is, it kind of, I don't know, it was very difficult for me to deal with back then. And she looked me in the eyes and she said, you know, you've done so well, and I'm so proud of you. Please make something out of your life still. And I was thinking by myself, like, well, I've been very successful. I followed society's playbook. You know, you got to get a degree, you got to get a good job. But if I have to be truly honest with myself, I don't feel like successful right now, because even though, you know, I have a very successful career and I was making good money, but inside I was just empty. And I really didn't feel alive. It was always work, work, work. And, you know, I had everything that money could buy, you know, but inside myself, I just, yeah, I wasn't really happy. And, you know, I was drinking a lot back then and doing anything because I couldn't deal with the pain, because my mother was my best friend. And so came back to the United States, and then, you know, hit like rock bottom. And then strange things started to happen. My mother started to appear in dreams, and I started to get all these thoughts. And I was like, one day I was like, I'm not sure if these are my thoughts, because back then I thought that thoughts just lived in our head, right? And it was just something that the brain produced. But that's when I thought, like, well, these are such strange thoughts. What if this is my mother reaching out to me? And no, that can't be. But the cat was out of the bag because I started to explore that and I started to look into spirituality. So I learned how to meditate, and then I felt such a strong connection with my mother. And when we open up like this, it's kind of like the universe, whatever you want to call it, like conspires for us to go down that path. So I met my first mentor, who was a Reiki master, and she had never met my mother. I mean, my mother had always lived in Belgium, and she was in the US, and she could basically bring my mother through as if she was sitting at the table. So we would have lunch every 2 weeks, and it was Kelly was her name, my mentor, and it was Kelly and then my mother in spirit and me. And she told Kelly, my mother did, like, okay, Nico's going to be really skeptical of this. He might even think that he's like losing his mind. So I'm going to tell him some things that are going to happen in his future. First of all, she knew, Kelly, my mentor, knew so many things from my past that she got from her. There's no way that she could have known these things. And she kept on telling me all these things. And then my mother said to her, tell him this. And she predicted like all these things about my future. And they started to happen because I would go back home to Belgium, and yeah, my dad, my sister, they all thought I'd like lost my mind. And my dad had talked to his like counselor and said, well, hey, if that's what he needs to process this, let him believe this stuff, right? And but whatever works for him. And then so all these things started to happen, and these were very specific things, like your father's gonna have a new girlfriend soon, and his girlfriend's name is going to be the same as your mother's name, Godelieve, but she's also not going to be called Godelieve. She's going to be want to be called Leva, and she's going to be 7 years younger than him. And the first time that Nico is going to meet her, this is what they're going to be eating, like all like very specific stuff. And yeah, that's where my journey started, because like I had to like open to these realms, and for me it was like, well, clearly I didn't know anything, but I was open-minded. I was like, you know what, everything I believe to be true, I'm gonna throw it all away, and if it's truth, like it'll come back to me. So that's how my journey started in 2012. And since then, I met like teachers from all over the world, shamans. I have a teacher who's an actual Daoist master who's achieved like a high level of consciousness. And then I've had so many experiences to where for me what started to develop, like spirituality was no longer like this thing that you believe in. No, I've had like firsthand experience, and that's what it's always been about for me. I've always had an open mind, definitely since then, but I was always like, hey, I want to experience this firsthand, because else it's just a belief and it's just, a thought or something that I'm telling myself to be true. But if I actually have a tangible experience, that's like a whole different ball game. And so yeah, that's what happened. So I went down this path, and then I went, like most of us do, I went overboard on the spirituality side. And then later I found like the middle path. And what I discovered was that there's actually a lot of science where spirituality and science, they're not these two separate things. But then I started, for example, learning about the work of Dr. Ibrahim Karim, which I believe he has like beautiful models, not only to explain this, but ways to measure these subtle realms. And I'm still a scientist at heart, and I will always be. But what I've learned with what I call the new ancient science, right, is that if our model is correct, science and spirituality are not these two opposite things, but they're actually different ways of looking at the same thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's how my journey started. So And now I understand why it had to be this way, because I had to go full on science. And then I always got in trouble in class because there were all these things that didn't make sense to me. So I was always like ask the teacher, and I never got like good answers on these things. And then once I started studying the work of Dr. Karim and many other scientists that are kind of laughed at in the mainstream science, but they actually provided me with the answers of things that can really not be explained in mainstream science. So that's where my passion is now. I had to go down the science path and then also see all its limitations to where now I feel, yeah, I have a much better understanding. I'm not saying I understand everything, not by a long shot. The great mystery will always be there. But with these new scientists, I've got such a new understanding of how our reality works. And that, for me, I like to know how, why. And that explained a lot of that. So that's how I rolled into this. So I didn't have a choice. It wasn't like one day I had new beliefs and I wanted to be spiritual. Oh no, it was put like right in front of my nose.
Oh my gosh, I relate to the science piece so much because I found my higher power through through science. Like that was something I could really, I'm like, oh, yep, the proof is right here. I really like this. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was on a spiritual journey. So I really relate to your story so much. Now, I know you're very passionate about helping other people and helping people with their health. Can you share like, why is it so difficult these days for somebody to improve their health? So, yeah, some people don't know about some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Our audience does know a little bit about, non-native EMFs and whatnot, but I'd love for you to share, like, from your perspective, what are you seeing?
Yeah, why it's so difficult these days is it's basically because of what our environment has become. And I believe science for a big part is to blame in that. There's a lot of good things that come out of science, right? But also what we consider science and the truth is such a small part of the spectrum of of how our reality functions. We only basically look at the physical level. We talk about atoms and molecules, and we have the table of Mendeleev, to explain chemistry, and then we actually look at what we call the sub level, which is the electromagnetic spectrum. Other than that, science says all this other stuff, that's just in your head. For me, science is the study of phenomena, ultimately, with an open mind, without any preconceived notices. And so we ignore emotions, we ignore thoughts, all these phenomena that all of us experience daily, probably every few seconds when it comes to thinking. And then we also have like the spiritual phenomena and energy and how chi or prana, how it flows through the body. All of that is ignored. And because of this, we see ourselves as being separate from the environment. It's like, yeah, we're brought into the world. No, we actually come out of the world and we return there like everything. And we're always fully connected to our environment, because where do I start and where do I end? Because the air that I'm breathing in, that's what a tree is breathing out. I cannot go, in the morning, I cannot wake up and just open my mouth and take all the nutrition in from the sun. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that the light does and regulates in the body, then you know that much better than I do. But we cannot take sunlight in like directly for our sustenance. So that's why we have other organs outside of ourselves that are called plants. And what they do is they actually take this sunlight and then and life force and they store it for us to where we can then consume the apple, whatever it is. And that's ultimately how we get that light into our bodies. So we have to fully change our paradigm of of who we are and how we are connected. Everything in nature is connected. And we don't live on the earth, we live in the earth. So that's why my view on health is very different, because just taking care of what you consider to be you and your body, well, it's not good enough, because guess what? If nature doesn't thrive, we are not going to thrive either. And that's why we've made all these decisions around non-native EMFs, and we've chosen to use electromagnetic frequencies. And there's a lot of great things. I mean, I've been a computer guy for over 40 years. I got my first computer when I was 9 years old. I started coding. So,
We would
and
call
I
that a
worked,
geek. In my
yeah,
country, in
total
Canada, we'd
geek.
call you that a science geek or computer geek.
Yeah, I'm an absolute computer geek, and I love it. But let's face it, oftentimes when we make these decisions, and definitely because our model in science is so limited, we don't see the impact that our choices have on everything. And that's why we're in a situation now with non-native EMFs, to where we create a unsustainable environment. I mean, we're killing off nature. We're dehydrating the entire planet. And so now they want to build all these smart cities, and they have electric cars. Well, smart cities, well, that might be great, but no human being is going to be able to live in them. I mean, they're basically going to succumb to all the non-native EMFs. So, and this has happened before, right? Where we made decisions if we're going to use this for propulsion or whatever, and then decades later we only realize the impact that it has on all living beings. And then, you know, I think the whole situation we're in the world is because we see ourselves as separate and through such a small perspective, and we need to open that up, because quite frankly, if you're going to keep going down this path, I mean, we're going to destroy all of nature and ourselves with it. So I think ultimately the only way we can make that shift is to see ourselves as part of nature and include all the other realms of existence, and become stewards of nature again rather than cannibalizing nature.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that term. I heard that. I think I don't know if I saw it written somewhere or heard it. You said it before, but that bears repeating. Like we need to become stewards and not cannibals of nature. I just, oh, that's so powerful, that statement. So do can we just talk a little bit about the effect of this non-native electromagnetic radiation on
Absolutely.
like water? Maybe we could talk a little bit about water. And I know there's water in the cosmic tower, but there's water in our bodies, and we exist in this. We're learning from, you mentioned before we recorded, you asked us if we were in the kind of the realm of Carrie Bennett. We both trained under her, but she's we're hoping to get her back on the podcast to talk about plasma, and this
Mhm.
idea that everything's water. The fact that yes, we have water in our bodies, but we are like the fish swimming in the ocean of water, not knowing that this air or ether or plasma around us is water based. And
Mhm.
anyway, I could go on and on, but because it's so exciting when you start to think about that concept. Could you tell us more about this? Yeah, the effects of water, effects of non-native electromagnetic frequencies on all the water that I just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And why are we made of water to begin with? I mean, I'm an electromechanical engineer. If I had to design a body, water might not have been my first choice. I would have been like, hey, I want to make it strong, and everything really is made up of water, and that's why we have to look at something that mainstream science doesn't recognize, which is life force. And life force is what animates all living organisms, and the carrier for that is water. And you just mentioned the ether. And people ask me, like, how do you explain ether to a person? I was like, well, it's kind of a challenge because, we live in the ether and we're made up of ether. So it's trying to explain to a goldfish what water is. We're made up of it. It's right under our nose that we don't even recognize it. So yes, we are made up, mostly of water, a very high percentage of water, because water for me is basically the ether that has come, in a sense, like all the way down into the physical realm. Everything is ether, but water, in a sense, resembles the ether the most if you have to pick one of the elements. And so it's basically, I also call it like our bio battery, because as you both know, that's what, and a lot of people still only look from the electrical and the magnetic perspective. And then we talk about fourth phase water. I mean, when we say you and I were made of water, we're not speaking about tap water, right? We're speaking about living water, water that is alive. I mean, people talk about structured water, to where the water molecules are actually in a certain arrangements to where you then free electrons are created, the Gerald Pollack work of the fourth phase of water. But that's still, again, such a limited point of view, because we're looking at free electrons as life force, basically. I mean, we talk about having charge, and the water holds that charge. And if the charge is gone, we pass. We no longer have the life force. But that's such a limited view on life force too, because if it were that simple, I could just plug my fingers here into the power socket and I would have all the life force that I need. But no, actually, we have to look at life force, and life force all comes from whatever you want to call it, the one source. And then it actually comes down the spiritual realm, you can call it the mental, the emotional, the etheric realm. And then it animates physical matter, and then it decays in what we call electromagnetic frequencies. But that's actually after that life force has been used. So in a sense, when we look at the electromagnetic spectrum, that's actually an effect of the decay of the life force after it has done its function in a living organism or in our bodies. So to come back to your question, sorry, it's a long way to go about that.
Yeah.
But basically, what happens is with the non-native EMFs, like as I said, the water in the body and in organisms is living. And what happens is, not only does the non-native EMF disturb this structure, you could look at it from that point of view, that, and you can see that. I mean, if you take saliva, for example, I've seen pictures of that too, where when the water is alive and you flash freeze it and you take pictures of it, you see beautiful structures, and then you hold your cell phone to your head and then you look at that water again, or you hold a cell phone over that saliva, and all the structures are distorted, right? And that shows us that it basically, the water, quote unquote, is killed. There's no life force in it anymore. So one of the major problems with the non-native EMFs is that they contain an energy quality that is very dehydrating, right? So what all these non-native EMFs are doing, they're basically, dehydrating living organisms and sucking the life force out of them. And I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, because we're turning the whole world into a microwave. Have you ever put an egg into a microwave even for 2 minutes and then try to grow a chick like out of it? No, you can't, right? Because your food might be warm, but all the life force is gone. It's all been destroyed, right? And it gets dehydrated. So we're basically creating this ginormous microwave oven on our planet.
And just like a reminder to people that like the microwave oven is 2.4 gigahertz, and our Wi-Fi is actually 2.4 gigahertz. And Jack Cruz always uses this analogy. You maybe have heard of it, where he doesn't use the egg, but he talks about taking a steak. And I've done this where you have leftover steak and you just want to reheat it, and it's leather, like it's dry. So I learned to use a steamer, and at least yeah, it keeps the moisture, but because you're not putting those non-native, maybe there's a little bit of electrical charge, but it's nothing compared to zapping it with 2.4 gigahertz, you know?
Yeah, I mean the microwave, that was one of the things when I started to wake up, I got really sensitive to energy and I started to see people's auras and I could feel energies. And I couldn't even have the microwave plugged in my home. I mean, just the energy coming off of it, I didn't use it, right? But just when it was plugged in, I mean, I just kicked it to the curb. I had to get rid of it because the energy of it, I mean, if you're sensitive, it's a terrible like energy. So I just got rid of it and tossed it on the street.
Yeah,
I
I
had,
most
oh,
of us
sorry.
don't have them anymore, right?
Yeah, I had a mentor, actually an alkaline mentor, who knew a lot about non-native EMFs, and she came and she alkalized my kitchen when my whole family was away. My two kids were at camp for 3 weeks, and my husband was on a trip, and we went through the entire kitchen, and it was a dramatic change. And the microwave, she took it away. She took it out of the house because she said, Laura, if you leave it in the house, they're gonna pressure you and it's gonna come right back to the kitchen. Well, oh my God, for years, my family would talk about how traumatic this was to lose the microwave. And now, of course, they know so much more. And that I hear them, oh yeah, we got rid of our microwave years ago, But it was, yeah, it was a trauma in our house that's, yeah, still talked about.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. All right. So this is a good place to probably bring in the cosmic tower and how the cosmic tower harmonizes and why would somebody want to bring or need or have a cosmic tower. And we'll talk about like the different ones and the benefits and all that, but I'd love for you to just kind of go with that because I love how you talk about the cosmic tower. You do it so beautifully.
Yes, happy to talk about that. And first, before we jump into Cosmic Tower, when it comes to the non-native EMS, what I should also mention is that a lot of people are aware that this is an issue now, right? Even though mainstream science and, special interests, they still say, no, it's all within safe limits and there's not a problem. Well, there is clearly a problem, and but the issue is that people only look once again at the electromagnetic spectrum, right? And the electromagnetic spectrum again is such a small portion. And so what do people look at when they think about non-native EMFs? Again, we're going to separate ourselves even more from the environment. So we're going to try to block it out. And I understand that, but here's the problem with the non-native EMFs. You simply cannot block them out. First of all, practically, it's not possible in our world right now because we have, we don't just have our devices, but we also have smart meters in the homes, and we have satellites that beam 5G. So even from an electromechanical radiation point of view, there's no way you can escape EMFs. Not even, if you move out to nature, it will be a lot less, but you can't really escape it anymore. But there's a really important distinction between electromagnetic radiation and electrosmog. Those are two different things, and it's really the people that are electrosensitive, and I know a lot of them, because of what I do and our community. A lot of people that really have tried to limit as much as they can the electromagnetic radiation and block it out the best they can, and still they don't have improvement. They still don't feel bad, and then mainstream science and doctors are saying, oh, it's just all in your head and you're making this up. No, it's not, because let's not forget that we only look up to the speed of light in a traditional science. So I mean, it's different with quantum physics, but there's all these realms that are faster than the speed of light. In the etheric realm, the emotional plane, the mental plane. Ever heard of the speed of thought? Right? It's like instantaneous. These are the faster than the speed of light realms, and they're not electromagnetic in nature, right? So they use what is called, I mean, longitudinal compression waves is the right term. People often talk about scalar waves, which is a form of longitudinal compression waves. And that's how the communication happens. So we have this life force that comes all the way from the source, travels all the way down into the physical realm. And this happens through, in these higher planes, it happens in faster than light. And this actually been proven scientifically now that thoughts are and telepathy, that it exists and that it's instantaneous. So the problem is that electrosmog is a non-electromagnetic phenomena. So the best analogy you can use to understand it, or a good analogy, is if you go see a ship that moves through water, you have this initial wave of the movement, and you could look at that as the electromagnetic radiation. But then what do you notice long after the ship has passed? You have all these little waves, and they spread much further, and they linger for much longer. Well, that's how we have to look at electrosmog, right? We have the initial electromagnetic radiation, but then we have these much more subtle waves that spread much further and they linger. Now, if you have many different sources, what happens is that these waves actually they go into resonance with each other, and they create these standing waves. So not only do we have the electromagnetic radiation, but then we have the lingering of the electrosmog, and it affects us on the emotional plane, on the mental plane. Think about the rain falling down. Electromagnetic radiation is the rain coming down, and the fog that lingers is like the electrosmog. So, and what's really important to understand is, because these are not electromagnetic in nature, is that you cannot shield yourself from them, right? Most people are familiar with the term scalar waves. They travel right through a Faraday cage, so they cannot be shielded. So the only way we can get out of this is by harmonizing it. And what do we mean with that? Because physics only talks about quantity, but we have to talk about the quality. And with the quality, we mean, what is the effect of this on the human body, right? And so when we talk about harmonization, and this is also the work of Dr. Ibrahim Karim, I'm a biogeometry student myself, because he has great models to explain this, and to actually measure these subtle energies, to measure these qualities. And just like the cosmic tower, biogeometry is also all about changing the quality. So what we do, instead of trying to block the electromagnetic wave out, we actually change the quality of it to where it's no longer detrimental to living organisms, but to make it to where it doesn't harm the body or even helps heal the body. Do you know that we could create all this Wi-Fi technology and actually have it spread, healing energy? It's totally doable, and I surely hope that we get there soon,
Yeah.
because that would solve a lot of our issues. But the way
It
that is
does.
done is by changing the quality. So when we talk about non-native EMFs, rather than blocking out, it's not going to work, right? You can't escape from it. And then at the same time, we have these scalar components that simply travel through anything, and they go far distances. So the only way we can resolve is through harmonization. That's how the cosmic tower works. This is why if you take a cosmic tower or even biogeometry or other harmonization solutions, well, people look, they all use their EMF meter, and that's really good to find out where the main sources are and how strong the non-native EMF is. But it doesn't tell you anything about the quality, because you can have devices that create electromagnetic radiation that heal you, and then other ones like our Wi-Fi and all the other technologies that kill you. An EMF meter cannot tell you the difference. That
Wow.
is why we need things like scientific physical radiesthesia, which are tools where we can actually measure the quality and the effects of that particular radiation or whatever it is on the living organisms,
Nico,
right?
what did you call that? Scientific radio aesthesia?
Radiesthesia, scientific or physical radiesthesia. And what it actually is, and this has been around for, oh gosh, thousands of years, probably, right? I spent the last 2 winters in Egypt. Well, clearly the Egyptians, if you look at the pyramids and everything else, they were much more evolved than we were. And the other thing that they noticed is that once we got satellites, all the places where they detected gold, the Egyptians had already been. So how were they able to figure out where the gold was? It was through things like through physical radiesthesia. And it's the use of certain tools to measure the subtle energy. And it's like dowsing, but I don't like to use that word, because when you speak about dowsing, most people think about, oh, somebody gets a pendulum and then asks a question and gets a yes or no. It can be very much, I mean, there's a lot of people that can do this real accurately, but you need to have a really clear mind and subconscious mind, or it's going to influence the measurement. But what radiesthesia is, these are instruments that are actually attuned to those particular planes. So it happens before the mind is part of it, and you can actually then measure these subtle energy qualities. And this has been around for a long time in our modern times too, right? The French, they really developed this. They developed ways to measure all these subtle qualities. Radiesthesia was used in the Vietnam War and World War One and Two. They used it to look for mines, right? I mean, this has been around. This is not in the realm of woo-woo, but basically what it does, this instrument measures the effect that something has on your energy field. And then, you get a particular movement, or you have particular scales that you can measure the quality. So that's just in a nutshell with radiesthesia. But it allows us to measure all these qualities as most of us cannot directly perceive.
That's a really great point. I've never even thought of that. Like when I think of these tools that we use to, measure, that it's not taking that into account. So that's very eye-opening. What I was going to ask you is, can you explain scalar wave? Now you talked about the electromagnetic spectrum and how that's the decay, because you explained the levels so nicely. Where do scalar waves fit in there, if they're even in there? Like, can you just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so I like to talk generally. A longitudinal compression wave is the best way to explain it is like most waves that people are familiar are like this, right? So you move a rope and it'll travel down, and the waves get weaker as you get further from the source. But
Like a
it,
sinusoidal wave?
yeah, yes,
Okay.
exactly. So it'll go like this. But as we talked about before, we actually all live and are made up of this medium called the ether, right? But you can also have a pressure wave that moves, like sound, for example. That's a pressure wave moving, right? The sound is a pressure wave moving through the air. And then it hits your eardrum, and then in the brain, this gets turned into sound. You can look at a longitudinal compression wave as a sort of like pressure wave, but then moving through the ether, like light, right? oh, is light a particle or is it a wave? No, light is actually a phenomena of a movement through the ether, right? Just like sound is not a particle hitting your ears,
Right.
is light. It's not a particle that travels, right? It's a perturbation, if you want to call it, a disturbance through the ether that we then perceive as light. Right. So longitudinal compression waves. Now imagine, and this is the ether, it's challenging to understand, but actually the ether has a very high density, right? So you could, I think the best analogy I could give you for like a scalar wave or a longitudinal compression wave in the ether is like, for example, a nail has a high density. Hit a nail. How long does it take for that impulse to get from here to there? It's instantaneous,
Mm.
right? So imagine the same happening in the ether. So we have these pressure waves, we have these longitudinal compression waves that are in the ether. And then when we talk about scalar waves, that's a special form of longitudinal compression waves. And it gets created when you take two electromagnetic signals and you shift them exactly 180 degrees out of phase so they cancel each other out, right? When you do that, then that electromagnetic wave is canceled out, but that energy actually travels as scalar waves. It's almost like a squirt gun, if you push it together. Where does that energy then go? Well, it goes into the ether and it travels as longitudinal compression waves. I
Okay.
hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've never heard anyone explain it. I've heard scalar wave multiple times, never had a chance to ask anyone to explain it. That was beautiful. And yeah, so that with that, how does the cosmic tower harmonize this all this damage we've done basically? All the stuff we've introduced to Earth that we have going on.
Yeah, so the cosmic tower actually it works on living water. Just like we are water and all the other, plants and animals, we're all made of water. So the cosmic tower, it contains water, but again, not like tap water, but living water coming from healing springs to where you have the full spectrum of light in the water. The inventor Harold, good friend of mine, he actually used to call it rainbow water because he said they
Oh.
had to find the exact water to put together so there's no overlap in the frequency spectrum, but all of it is present, right? Because with water, I mean, most of us only think about it as molecules and you drink it. No, but water is a carrier of information. Water has memory. Water has consciousness. We again have to look at the quality of the water, how much life force is present, how much of the spectrum of light is within the water. So the water in the cosmic tower, you could call it like a full spectrum living water. So basically all the whole rainbow frequency and above, all the subtle qualities are present in the water. And then what happens is there's two vessels, like with Ula over there, there's one in the bottom and there's one at the top. There's a vessel much lower, right, and at the top. And then there's a crystal in the center. And then what happens, it gets activated and the water in the bottom vessel is going to go counter. And don't think of the water spinning like this, but look at it as more of a you would call subatomic level, right? And so counterclockwise and then clockwise at the top. What does this do? This opens a toroidal field. This creates a toroidal field, and then the crystal in the center is used to anchor that. And toroidal fields, I don't know how familiar your audience is with toroidal fields, but everything is made up of toroidal fields on the energetic level. I mean, anyway from what we call electrons or atoms all the way up to the universe itself. And for people to understand this, it's like a donut shape.
Mhm.
right? So you could look at two cones coming together and it creates this flow. Look at the Earth's electromagnetic field, right? You can think about that shape, right? The North Pole and the South Pole, and then this field like spreading out. Well, that is actually the energetic building block of all of reality. So it's not only the human energy field looks like this. If you go to HeartMath, the electromagnetic field of the heart is that shape. And it's all toroidal field, the whole galaxies to the whole universe itself. It's a
Auras,
toroidal field.
toroidal fields as well.
What do you say?
Are our auras also
Mhm.
toroidal fields?
Yeah, yes. And that depends. I mean, how far you consider the aura extending out, because of course it's through the whole body. It doesn't just go from the skin to here, right? We're
Right.
all made up of this energy. And I mean, if you think about in energy medicine or more spiritual traditions, we have this channel that runs through the middle of the body, right? Kind of where the spine is. You have this channel and so the energy flows in both ways there, and it creates this toroidal field. And in the center of that like toroidal field, it actually goes beyond time and space. And you could call it a portal, but call it a gateway to like the higher dimensions. So all of this is like connected into the subtle realms through the center of this toroidal field. So the cosmic tower has this toroidal field, and what it does, it basically also creates these longitudinal compression waves that we've talked about. A lot of people use scalar waves. It's not entirely accurate, but it's okay. So you have these waves that are created, and for the important thing to understand about a longitudinal compression wave is that it carries the quality of the source and it carries it very far. So if the source of that longitudinal compression wave is detrimental, like with EMF, as we talked about, it carries that quality very far,
Mm.
right? But the opposite is also true. So in this case, what is the source of, of the energy and of the field of the cosmic tower? It's these healing waters that contain the full spectrum of all, you could look at it as information that is needed for living organisms. So because of that toroidal field, this gets carried far through the environment. And what it does, it doesn't cancel out the electromagnetic radiation, but it changes the quality of it to where it's beneficial for life. In biogeometry, they talk about the one harmonizing quality of the center. That's actually if you go in the center of a vortex and you have that connection to nature, to the source energy, that's like the ultimate like balancing quality. So if you look at a cosmic tower, it has a very strong what they call one harmonizing quality. And what that does, it actually balances everything out. So an electromagnetic wave, you can actually change the quality of that wave on the higher planes, on the etheric planes, to where the electromagnetic radiation is still going to be present. Nothing's going to have changed on your meter. But if you would test it with physical radiesthesia, scientific radiesthesia, whatever you want to call it, you will see that the quality has completely changed. Like in Russia, Nikolai Kozyrev, he actually did an experiment to where he melted ice and then he put like a glass container over it and he shielded it from electromagnetic radiation and he put a pendulum in there. And what he noticed is if ice was melting, the pendulum would start going in one way, right? And if you would freeze ice, it would go in a different way. And that's how the Russians came up with what is called torsion fields,
Mm.
which they say if you look at the more the subatomic level, which is that everything is made up of these vortexes. Think about them of toroidal fields. And either one of two things is going to happen. Either more life force is going to come in, and we call that negentropic, which is a fancy word, basically for bringing more structure back, right? And then we have entropy, which is the other way, which is a loss of life force. Entropy is another word for chaos, right? So what you can do and what the cosmic tower does, for example, because that's one of the things people have a hard time wrapping their head around. How can it work not only for EMF, but how can it also neutralize certain toxins that might be in food or in water? And how can it, because we compartmentalize everything. But if we go look at the subtle energetic level, if you have to explain it very basically, is if this counterclockwise spin is created by anything in our energy field, our life force leaves our body or of any living organism. While if a clockwise spin is created, more life force is going to come in, more structure is going to come in. So if we look at toxins, electromagnetic radiation, if we want to look at from that angle, they all create this counterclockwise spin, which is a loss of our life force. But what we can do through harmonization and with things like the cosmic tower is actually we can change this spin, right? To where on a subatomic level, basically from counterclockwise, you go back to clockwise, and then you no longer have that detrimental effect on your life force.
Nico, I test people's chakras with a pendulum, and then I use orgonite to help balance them. And it's interesting because the five chakras in between the root and the crown, the energy is supposed to spin counterclockwise, and that is energy leaving the body. That's anyway, I don't know if that's it's helping me picture all this as you explain it, but yeah, that's so interesting. And now I'm thinking, oh, if I had a cosmic tower in the room, I wouldn't need to do this. Save
Yeah,
me a lot of
and if you
effort.
again look at the chakras, they're also toroidal fields, right? They're not
They
just a
are.
vortex. It's
Right.
both ways,
Oh.
right? So you have to look at them as toroidal fields and not just vortexes. So energy coming in on one end, going out in the other in
That's
this
right.
sense. Right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Of course. Yeah. So much to learn. Love
Yeah.
it.
Can you kind of list or think about maybe testimonials people have shared, just like, and then what you know of course, your experience of the benefits of the cosmic tower, like what might people see or start to experience?
Yeah, so the best way I find to explain it is like a lot of people know about power spots in nature. You might be familiar with Sedona or other sacred power spots. I mean, just like we in our body have our meridians and then we have our acupuncture points, those are all also little toroidal fields. What's present in a sacred power spot, it's also a toroidal field because you have crossing of underground water, right? And what happens is it's very similar to a cosmic tower. It then actually creates this power spot. So people go there and they say, wow, I feel amazing. I have so much energy. Or like Lourdes in France, people were healed, from drinking the water, right? It's not all so much woo-woo and mystery. It's actually because of these subtle energies, right? That mainstream science doesn't acknowledge that, they have a very harmonizing effect on the body. So when you go out in nature to a beautiful spot and you just feel rejuvenated because of the energies there, definitely when you go to a power spot. So you could look at the cosmic tower as a portable power spot. So what it does, it creates this energy field in your home. And I like to describe it, it's like nature. It's like being in a pristine spot or being in a power spot. So it's not like the cosmic tower does any healing or name it that way. No, you present it with a natural environment, with a great energetic environment, and the body already knows what to do. It's just that our bodies, and I'm not just talking about physical, but mental also and emotional, we're constantly being bombarded. We're in an environment that doesn't sustain us, right? So this basically creates an environment to where the body then can do its thing, right? None of the healing comes from us or the healer or whatever. I mean, it's great to have somebody guide you or help you, but I mean, we don't have to tell the body, now you got to go heal this, you got to heal that. No, we got to create an environment, an outer environment that the body can thrive in, and an inner environment with what we take in through our foods and our water, etc. And the body knows what to do. So because of that, there are many, many benefits of the cosmic tower, because if we're in a natural environment, it's incredible what the body is capable of doing, right? How nature can simply balance everything out. But so what happens is, one of the things that we get so often from people is like, oh my God, I slept amazing. And what happens is, like, it's kind of like boiling the frog, what is going on here with the electromagnetic radiation is that, we've just rolled into this and it gets dialed up and gets dialed up, and we don't even know the detrimental effects on it. But again, people only look at the physical. But think about all the mental, on the mental plane, on the higher plane, all the distortion it creates, on the emotional plane, irritability, depression, just not having any zest like for life. I mean, these are all symptoms related to non-native EMFs that a lot of people, might not even look at. So I think it's the same with our sleep, because all night, our energetic bodies are being irritated about with all these non-natural things. I think if you could actually make it visible of what all this non-native EMF does, like in the subtle planes, I mean, you probably couldn't see through the fog because there's so much of it, and we sleep in it,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, we have a lot of people. That's one of the immediate responses. Oh, I slept so much better. But then, because of the type of field that the cosmic tower has, all the water that's in its field gets structured, so it gets its life force back. But the same also for the foods you bring into your home, right? Because we are meant to eat straight from the plant. Because the moment we disconnect it from the source, of the life force, and then it gets transported all the way from Mexico, well, guess what? By the time that organic fruit gets to you, what the body actually needs, this life force energy, is no longer in it, or very little in it. And that's why people can never really feel nourished, right? Or they might eat a lot, but ultimately what the body needs, this life force, it is no longer there. So with the cosmic tower, any fruits you bring into your home, they also get their life force back. We had a lot of people comment like, hey, I had a box of apples here. Normally it is bad, those apples go bad after X amount of time, and here they're sitting like 3 weeks later, and they look great and they still taste great. What is going on? Because the field infuses it with that life force. So so we hear that, but yeah, I would, in general, I would like for people to think about what is your body capable of if you're in a perfect, pristine, and a natural environment, and the cosmic tower brings that into your home.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, so this house is newer to us, and we lived here when I got Ula. And so there was, I don't want to say the house stunk. Well, it stunk in the garage because the man who lived here before smoked in the garage. He wasn't allowed to smoke in the house. So the garage had really, really had a strong smell. Like
Mhm.
we probably had lived here about a year and a half before I got this. and that smell dissipated like quicker. And it also in the house, there was like, I don't even know. It was like, I guess I explain it as stale, like a
Hmm.
staleness, like almost, I don't want to say old people smell, like there was an old smell. And we had the house tested for mold. So I wasn't worried about a mold issue. And definitely it's neutralized the air. And like I feel calm when I'm at home. I feel like less stress when I get home. And yeah, I chalk that up to this. Because that
Well,
wasn't
yeah.
that before.
Well, what you mentioned about the air, I mean, one of the ways you could look at that is like there's moisture in air too. So when you structure the water in the air, or you put the life force back into it, well, the quality is going to change of it.
Mhm.
And then the staleness, like you refer to, I mean, you're doing it through like the taste of through your smell you speak about, but remember that any emotion that people had, detrimental emotion, any fights, it that energy lingers and it builds up. Like that's why when I like go to a hotel room, I first have to like if I don't have my tower with me, I have to first like energetically clear it because in a sense you feel like all the energy from the people that were before there, it affects you. It leaves an imprint in the ether, right? Somebody had a fight or they were very depressed or
Oh,
whatever. I mean, you can feel this if you walk into a room where people are angry or depressed. I mean, you don't even have to know what's going on. You can immediately, if you're sensitive, you immediately feel how it affects you. So think about this happening over and over and over and over in that home. And then you come in and all of a sudden like this energy hits you. So think about it that way in a cosmic tower. Well it clears that out,
yeah.
right? And it harmonizes that again and it gives you a clean slate
Yeah.
or to start from.
That's awesome. Maybe talk about the different towers because I know people are going to be curious. They're going to go to the website that I'll link for them and they're going to be like, well, what one would I need? And yeah, I'll let you explain the different sizes.
And
Yeah,
could you
so
sort of
go ahead,
say,
sorry.
oh, I was just going to say, before you do that, just to put things into perspective, what size is yours that you've got in front of you?
This
That's
is
a
the
75.
75.
So, okay, thank you. Because I
Yeah.
did go to the
Yeah,
website
so
and look. I was just curious.
yeah, so basically the CTs are numbered Cosmic Tower and India has a 75 and it's basically 75 centimeters tall. That's where the numbers
Okay.
come from. So in the US we have three main categories, which is like travel and for the home and then for the environment. This is why I really got excited about the project when I met Harold, first of all, because he's such a pure heart and such a kind man. I felt an immediate connection. But what I liked about the Cosmic Towers is that it wasn't just looking at I have to protect me, the separate self. No, actually, it's all about regenerating nature and supporting nature and becoming stewards of nature again instead of cannibalizing it. So we can basically put them in three main categories. So in the United States, there's some other models in Europe. We have the 35 and then the 75 like you have, and they're for the home. So they're basically the 35 centimeters, then like yours 75. The 75 is 6 times more powerful than the 35 because it's not like a linear scale. It goes up exponentially. And this is basically for the home and it gives you the benefits of bringing the life force and harmony back into your home, harmonizing the non-native EMFs, structuring your water, and people can read all the benefits on the website. I mean, there's a lot of them, but they all come from the same principle, which is create a natural as environment as possible. And then we have the mini, and the mini is really small, and it's meant for travel when you maybe go to work and you don't take your cosmic tower with you. It's to protect your field while you're outside of the range of the field of the tower, at your home. And so the mini, you shouldn't just get the mini because it simply protects you so your aura, your energy field doesn't degrade while you're outside of the field of the tower you have at home, but it's not powerful enough to have all the benefits like of a 75 or a 35, because everything, how strong a cosmic tower is, it's all about how much water is in it and then how far the water vessels are spread apart. So the further they're apart, like the stronger the field. And then we have the 220s and the 250s. So 220 centimeters and 200 centimeters. And, they're about 155 or 150 kilograms. I mean, they're big. And so I guess that's over 300 pounds, 330 pounds or
Yeah,
so.
even this is heavy.
And yeah, and they go very, very far. They go up to ranges, 800 like to 1,000 kilometers. So we're talking
Wow.
about 500 miles. And these towers are really important in the sense that they address the systemic issues we have in our environment, like 5G, right? And they really help regenerate nature and revitalize nature and clear the energy on a very large scale. And the other thing they do is, because they have such a big range, they also support smaller towers that are within the range. Like your tower, for example, if you have people with large towers that live around you, think of the large towers as the big workhorses that take care of a lot of the loads. So your tower basically has a lot of that taken off its plate, right? So it can focus on different things, or it can help you with different things more, with healing, or, whatever level that's on, right? Whether that's physical, or a lot of times it's emotional too, or mental, where we have to let go of certain blockages. That's one of the things that will happen with the towers when you bring them into your environment, is that things are, it's not all, oh, everything's harmony now and my work is done and everything's easy, life's easy. No, it doesn't work that way. It's like the peeling of the onion, right? Certain things get resolved, and then, oh, I get people like, man, my tower was great the first 2 weeks, and now all these things are coming up and they're not so positive. I was like, yeah, those are things for you to let go of. Now it's like when you raise your vibration, if you want to call that, what happens when you boil water? The impurities come to the surface. It's the same with us. So there can be some detox, right? To where, like any healing process, right? Sometimes it might feel like things get a little worse before they get better. It's actually a good sign, at least when when you did something to start a healing process. It actually means that the body's working on it. And the same happens on the emotional and the mental plane.
Nico, that reminds me, it makes me think of homeopathy, you know,
Yes, exactly.
peeling the onion and how we have an aggravation phase, before the amelioration phase,
I
and
know
how,
that very
yeah,
well. My
yeah,
mother went back to college when she was 40 years old to study homeopathy, because I'd gotten so many antibiotics from the doctors that nothing was really working anymore. So she went back to study homeopathy. My mom was a dentist, so she actually went to study that. And you're actually exactly right. It initiates, it's sort of like a Herxheimer reaction, they call it sometimes. It's like,
yes,
things get a little worse, and then they get better.
better, yeah. I think saw something on the website, or maybe heard you in a podcast mention that having the cosmic tower is like having a personal homeopath in your home, for whatever
Yeah,
ailment.
Harold
Oh,
used
this is
to.
the remedy. This is the remedy. And yeah.
Yeah, and homeopathy is a beautiful example, right? Because what happens? There's no molecules even present anymore in the water, because everything gets diluted so many times,
Mhm.
right? So that's why mainstream science, oh, it's quackery. That's all in your head. No,
Oh,
no, no. You have to look at the subtle energy, right? So what is left in whatever you take, in the globules or in whatever way you take it, what is left in there is an energetic imprint, and sometimes it's a very toxic substances.
like
And
arsenic.
why? Like arsenic, yeah,
Arsenic
arsenic or
album. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because what does that do? It puts a very and then small dose into the body of that on the energetic level, and that just starts, a chain, a reaction in your body that then causes the healing. And homeopathy is such a beautiful example to where if you look at chemistry, mainstream science, you say like that can't work. But again, if we look at everything is energy and we look at subtle energies, then you understand how it works, right?
So amazing. I love talking about this. All right. So, Laura, do you have any last questions? Because I think we covered like everything.
I guess one here, yeah, we all the technical ones. This is just a fun one in a way, I guess, and to bring out something. It wasn't until I was reading one of the documents that I saw that the creator of the tower actually passed away in
Hmm.
2023. I didn't know that. But there was a quote. He was in a car accident, I heard, or
Yeah.
some kind of accident. Yeah. But there was a quote. I just wanted to ask you, what does he mean by this? It's as long as man lives, he can be healed indefinitely.
Yes, that's the quote that Harold used, which basically what he meant that unless you're in a car crash
Mm,
and
mhm,
or have an accident, what he means is that if we have enough life force, if our bio battery stays charged, we can live indefinitely. And I truly think that if we go back thousands of years, I think the lifespan of what was much longer, and I definitely, but we've created this environment, that's so out of sync with nature. So basically, what he means is like, hey, we're all energetic beings. So as long as on an energetic level, everything is provided for the body to function, we can live very long lives. I don't know about indefinitely, although in
mhm.
Taoist traditions, there's some immortals that they talk about. And I know from my Taoist teacher, he had teachers that were well documented over 350 years old. And for the Western mind, we say this is crazy, but not from that perspective. There's a lot of talk about the immortals there, and well, how did they do it? It's through their energy cultivation, right? And they knew, all these traditions were passed from generation to generation to where they would live very, very long lives, and the ones that reached the highest level, I don't even know how how old the oldest ones are, but it just goes to show what we can do if we recognize ourselves as energy and we cultivate this energy. So I think our lifespans are going to increase also once we, clean up this mess. And I see this kind of as like we're growing up and we make our mistakes, but I see the future. I think the future is going to be great because we have all the technologies to really, to create a paradise on Earth. We just have to get through this phase here of the revealing, right? I mean, we've been controlled for a long time, but all the technologies are there. Free energy has been around for over 100 years since Nikola Tesla, right? And it's all been suppressed, but I think it's going to come out, and we're really going into a golden age. But we're going to have
Um,
to take a responsibility for it.
Yeah, you said in another podcast, which really lifted a lot of fear because, people listen to the things that, we share on this podcast, to get things into people's awareness, but we don't want to create fear because that is a very low vibration, right? And so, when people hear, oh, all the radiation, oh my gosh, well, what's my house like? And then they start to get, fearful. But you had said a statement about the earth. The earth and correct me if I'm wrong, but it went something like the Earth is always going to be here. Mother Earth is perfect. She knows best. She'll always be here. It's us who might, we're the ones who need to learn the lessons and come back to her. Yeah. So it was something around those lines. But you kind of
Yeah,
just
absolutely. Like Mother Earth, I mean, first of all, the Earth's conscious, right? This is another thing with mainstream science. Like, consciousness is this hallucination in your head. Other than that, well, I learned the hard way that that's absolutely not true. And that what we consider death, that's not the end, and that actually we live in a conscious universe where everything is conscious, all the way from the electrons all the way to the universe itself. And that doesn't mean conscious in a human way, right? Like, if you have pets or a dog or a cat, you know they're conscious, right? But it's not, I mean, we like to project the way we perceive consciousness onto our animals. Well, I wonder what my dog is thinking right now or whatever. No, they have their own consciousness, and they have their own way of perceiving reality through the spectrum that their senses work in. I mean, think about your dog, or if you have a dog, it can hear things that we cannot hear. Clearly, a cat can see things that we cannot see, right? An eagle that flies, their vision is not like ours, right? So, because of the ranges that the senses are in, they all have their own different experience of reality, but everything is conscious. And so is Mother Earth, and she is a being, and she's been very patient with her children. I mean, we've been total brats. We've been tearing down the house, right? But as the ultimate patient mother, she let us make her mistakes in a sense, so we can learn from it. But it's time to grow up now, right? And stop all the partying and stop trashing the house. We have to clean up our mess now. Go clean up your room. We have to, yeah, become stewards of nature again, and Mother Nature will be here. Whether we're going to be here, that's a different question. We're going to have I believe so, but we're going to have to clean up our act, because I mean, let me just tell you, if Mother Nature wanted to get rid of us, it would be like a dog shaking the water off its back, right? She totally could, but I believe like she's a very patient mother, letting us make our mistakes so we can learn from them. And now is that time. And that all starts with recognizing we are not separate from nature. And for me, that's one of the key things. I love the Cosmic Tower project, but what I love even more is teaching about this alternative science and giving people a new perspective on things. When we see everything as conscious and alive, and all of it is important, and we're a part of that, and we're an open energy system, I mean, at least for me, your whole way of looking at things changes. And the way you will have a respect for nature, and you want to care for nature, and it's time to give back for nature. Yeah, we cannibalized nature for a while. Well, we're growing up now. It's time to support nature again and recognize the interconnectedness of all of life.
yeah. Oh, I feel
Oh,
like this whole podcast was you answering the question I'm about to ask you.
it's true. I agree.
But maybe you could do well, anyway, you can answer it however you wish. What we have a signature question, and that is, what does quantum healthy mean to you? Well, how would you answer that?
Well, the word quantum gets thrown around everywhere these days, and for me, quantum still like focuses on more of like the subatomic level, right? And for me, what it really means is we have to go from a science of quantity to a science of quality, and have a holistic view of our reality that encompasses all of life. I think it was, I think I heard Sarah Kleiner said that it's quantum. You only need a very small amount. Or like in homeopathy, I would say it's quality. You only need a very small amount. And for me, it means recognizing our innate interconnectedness of all of life in the realms that we can experience and then the realms we currently cannot experience. And how every thought, not just every action, but every emotion, every thought, every intention affects the whole, and the whole affects the individual. And it's a two-way street, and it's a continuous exchange of information. So for me, it's all about nature. For me, is the ultimate like wisdom. I mean, call it the source. It's all about coming back into alignment with nature, and nature knows best.
Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Nico, for being here today. Lori, do you want to say anything before we close?
I know you're going to have all the links. So just going to ask so for website, can you tell us the website for Cosmic Tower? And do you have another website do you do some coaching? That I wanted to ask your offerings. Do you do personal coaching at all?
Yeah, I used to, but I've been more busy with the Cosmic Tower
Okay.
now. But the Cosmic Tower is on thewellnessenterprise.com.
Okay.
And then before we even started importing the products or became a part of the project, I built the cosmictower.com website because most of the information was only available in German, so I wanted to have information available in English. So
In
just
English. Okay.
built that website and people can go there to learn more.
Do you have on social media? Are you guys on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook?
YouTube, yeah. So the
YouTube?
Wellness Enterprise, we have our YouTube channel, and we do monthly Q&As
Mhm.
to where India knows that, and so you can come and any question. But we also talk about a lot of more like the subtle sciences and some of the things that I talked about because it's really hard to put it in a nutshell and
Mhm.
explain some of these principles in a short time. But yeah, those monthly Q&As are really about, you know, like-minded people and coming together and talking about these things, and of course, answering any questions about the cosmic towers.
Yeah, it's a very, very helpful group if you get a Cosmic Tower, and it's a very, very helpful group. I strongly recommend it, and I'll make sure I have all of those links in the show notes.
Mhm.
And yeah,
And
thank you
yeah.
again.
I've got a few little things to finish with, just to say, Nico, thank you for sharing the origin story, this spiritual journey that I think your mother would be very proud now to say that you've made something out of your life and that you are feeling truly alive compared to where you were, in the tech space before that. Thanks for being so open-minded and becoming a Taoist master, all the embracing of spirituality that you have done. And for finding Cosmic Tower. And now, of course, keeping Harold's work alive after his unfortunate accident, teaching us that humans can create technology and that will actually help to bring life force energy back into, as you've told us today, like humans, plants, fruits that we have on our kitchen table, the air, our emotions. Another thing I wanted to thank you for is your passion for sharing this new perspective on consciousness and recognizing. I love this today, a special moment when you talked about Mother Earth patiently waiting for us to grow up and stop being the little brats that we've been. I sort of see that as all the non-native EMFs and everything else and the
Mhm.
pollution of all sorts. But yeah, and just your higher purpose to help this regenerate nature and bringing this consciousness to become the stewards, right? For nature and not the cannibals that we have been. We all know. And I'm excited. I think a lot of us are feeling that there's a revolution going on right now, an awakening, renaissance. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah, so neat. And just lastly, this came up. Thank you for healing the planet one cosmic tower at a time.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And for your audience, like, yeah, don't be fearful. You are a very powerful being, and never underestimate the impact you have on the world. And hey, joy and playfulness are high vibrations. Be joyful, be playful, and yeah, that's how we'll raise the vibration together, if you wanna put it that way. And I think the future is looking great. So yeah, we have to recognize where we find ourselves now, but know that the solutions are there. And as we shift our consciousness, so will the whole reality on this planet shift. And each and every one of you, you're a very powerful being and a part of that. So never underestimate that.
Thank you so much again. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. And we will see you next time. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, Viva Rays, who allows for us to get this information to you. They offer top-of-the-line blue blocking glasses, which, as we know, are critical for our health these days for blocking artificial light at night. Over 90% of our time is spent indoors under artificial lights, and this puts us all prone to circadian rhythm disruption. You can use the code Quantum Healthy for a discount. Link is in the show notes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy podcast. We hope you found some value in this information. And if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakistmanwellness.com and Ndia at ndiaray.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.